So a few weeks ago, I put in an episode called The 5 Steps to Product Market Fit. And I had a lot of great feedback, but also a lot of questions around how to actually implement these steps. So today with Rob, what we'll be doing is going through the steps again. We'll be sharing a lot more stories and just adding a lot of color so that it's a bit clearer kind of how to implement these steps and also when some of these steps might break when they meet reality. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. Rob, welcome again to the show.
Thanks, Pablo. Yeah, like when you're running headfirst at full speed into a brick wall, you mean? Right?
That's exactly it, man.
That's the reality.
Founders doing. Yes.
It says here that I should do this, but every time I do that, I end up with a bloody forehead and a black eye. I'm not sure how to do this.
How many business books have you read that you were like, dude, I figured it out, I solved it, and then you realize like
every
right?
single one,
Right?
Like all 400 of the business books. So like, yeah, that is it. I have to pick my enemies wisely. You're right. I gotta, everything.
They all have a nugget of truth, right? But even like, disrupted, the Clay Christensen one, which is like the amazing one, the disruptive one, right? I just got to be a disruptor, man. I just got to come from the bottom. And then you're like, what does that really mean? How do I really do that?
It is like, you just got to build a hard drive that's better than the incumbents that caught, like, what? Wait, huh?
Right.
Sometimes, regardless of what your business is, or regardless of who you are, there's an inherent native reaction that happens when you decide to be an entrepreneur. And oftentimes you don't decide to be an entrepreneur. You just are. Like, you're born an entrepreneur. And there was a guy that I used to do a lot of work with way back in the day. And he said he would teach entrepreneurship. And I would think, like, that's not something you can teach. You can say, like, this is what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and this is how you do your books, and this is what, this is how you do accounting, and this is what you're product market. This is what you're supposed to, but then at the end of it all, you can't teach somebody to be an entrepreneur. They are or they aren't. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And so, like, that's the kind of lens I look at PMF from, is because there's no art or science to being an entrepreneur. There's just blind faith and stupidity. And if you are both of those things, you have blind faith and you're a little dumb, you can be an entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Basically what you're saying is, look, being an entrepreneur is like 90% practice, 10% theory, and I'm spending all my time on the 10%. So basically, like, what am I doing?
So we're trying to dissect it, and we're trying to get it to a point where it's like, this is the formula to being an entrepreneur. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you can do that. I don't think that exists.
That's totally legit, right? That's totally legit. And that was one of my frustrations even I talked about, which is like, it's not really a recipe in any meaningful sense of that word, because like you do all these things and you might not have product market fit, but I do think they are best practices, right? So just to go through them again, like the 5 of them, the first one is before startup mode, there's research mode. The second one is only the insanely focused survive. You have to be in the market to win the market. The fourth one is find value, not growth. And the fifth one is pivot harder, faster. Obviously, we'll go through all of them. But so starting at the first one, I think this is one that I do believe, especially amongst, it's not actually just first-time founders. I've seen it in repeat founders too, but specifically the repeat founders that their first one was almost like quote unquote too easy. Nothing's really too easy, but sometimes things just kind of work. You know what I mean? You put something out and it just, you get the pull and then you end up getting an exit and you're like, wow, okay, that worked out. Let's do it again. And on your second one, you're more polished. You've certainly you've learned a lot of things, but you actually didn't necessarily go through the painful part of finding pain points. You kind of just landed on one and you just assume if things look cleaner, more polished, it's going to work. First time founders, especially though, like I just find, because I worked with probably 100 idea stage companies through when I was an entrepreneur in residence. And that was my number one finding, was just, it was like, they had an idea and they're already out, trying to lean startup that idea, trying to go through the Eric Ries motion, the MVP stuff. And I'm like, man, everything you're doing doesn't matter, because fundamentally, I don't see anything, like nothing you're telling me tells me that you're even solving a real pain point. So that's kind of where the research piece comes from.
Research is a really interesting component to it that you need to do. Like, I don't dissuade this, but it's almost like when you get older and you've gone through the scars of building a business, that's when research is done. Like in the next startup that I do, I'm going to research a little bit more than the last one, and then the last one.
I mean, it's true. Look, and just to play almost devil's advocate myself, like even on the show itself, we spoke with, for example, Alan from Wattpad, and there's a few things there that don't necessarily fit with the research piece. Probably the first one being that like he just kind of put something out. I mean, he had this bigger idea of Wattpad ultimately today is they sold for like over $500 million. They're a marketplace for readers and writers, so anybody can create a story and anybody can read it. There's like 100 million users today. And he kind of had high level, at least this is what he told me when I spoke with him, this idea that user generated content would be a really big deal. This is in the 2000s, pre iPhone era, right? We're talking about, but he kind of saw that UGC with Facebook was out. And so you were seeing more of this user generated content stuff playing out. He thought this was going to have an impact when it came to storytelling and story writing. But his first app was like literally from flip phones. Like this is flip phone era. Like it's pre iPhone. There's no app store, and it's flip phone era. People have to connect to they have to do a million different steps just to get their app on their phone. And all it lets them do is read classic stories that are out of public, in public domain, like The Great Gatsby on their phone. And like there was no research, realistically for that. But the way I like to reframe it is it's kind of like as a result of there being no real research, he was in the market. Actually, one of the craziest stories of this, man, is he's like, I was in the market for 2 years before I had the first user upload a story. And the other thing he told me was that he's like, at one point, we had many discussions about giving up, but I told them, I said, listen, we only spend like I think it was something like we spend like $5 on hosting a month, and we make $2 a month on ads, so we're basically break even. Literally, like this is what he said to me, and he still has that check. And so my point is, the ones that don't do research, like whether it's because they've worked in the industry and so they've done implicit research for many years, or explicitly because they actually go and do customer discovery and all that stuff, tend to do it almost in practice. It just takes longer, and they do it like while they're in the market. But I don't know of many examples where somebody's not from an industry, doesn't do customer discovery, and hits it on the nail like right off the bat, except like a Facebook or a Snapchat or like these really exceptions of exceptions,
Yeah, but that Facebook wasn't even his idea, so it really doesn't. Somebody else did the research.
Whenever I mention Zuck, you just hate on him. I just gotta stay away. I gotta stay away from that.
No, but it's true though. You have to have a domain expertise, and that's where that the idea of hobbies comes into play. Like everybody says, like do what you love, find something other. Like, I mean, that's total crap. Don't do that. Like that doesn't work. You're just going to ruin the thing you love by
Right.
making it work, right? Like there's a but
you mean people will buy my paintings, man?
That's it. It's so
no,
true.
they won't. That's the thing.
I've just got these like bootleg copies of myself playing the guitar. I'm sure somebody wants them. They don't. Trust me, they don't. What ends up happening a lot of the time is that your domain expertise is the thing that becomes very visible to you. Like you see it, and then you test that market, and it's where you are completely a fish out of water. A good friend of mine when I was a kid. Like his dad made millions of dollars selling his business, and then he went bankrupt. And this stuck with me as a young entrepreneur. And I would ask why. How did you go bankrupt, man? You lived on this great street. You had a pool. You're like rich, blah blah. I drove Beamers. Had the first cell phone that I've ever seen in a car. You remember like the bricks? You couldn't use it because it was like $10 a second. But he said, Rob, like I put $1 million into an apartment building. I'm like, okay, like he bought into an apartment building. He's like, I have no idea how to run an apartment building. Like that stuck with me so much. He's like, he was an expert in his field and he succeeded. And then he got like the ego gets involved and he's like, easy peasy. Here's $1 million bucks. Here's $1 million bucks. Here's $1 million bucks. Oh, by the way, what now? I'm on food stamps. Got to sell the Beamer. And that happens more often than not. The ability to be able to control yourself in those situations, like it is imperative that you understand sometimes that you hit lightning, but you didn't hit it by accident. You hit it because you had that expertise.
I think one of the challenges though too, like if I think about when we were talking about this earlier, is like how do you actually do research, and then part of it is like how do you fund that? I mean, you can't. Like I'll tell you, like as a VC, and I'm a seed stage VC. There's people that come in earlier, like pre-seed, but there are nearly no, even pre-seed stage VCs that would fund somebody who says like, I'm just doing research. Like that's just, it's unfundable. So that's the other piece that we're talking about, hitting reality. And that's the other piece that comes to mind is like, to the extent that you need money to survive, which, most people do, you got to figure out like, how are you going to make it work? And that's where I think things get a lot complicated, because I do think a lot of founders, and maybe for the wrong reasons, but at the same time, out of necessity, they're like, well, I need to raise something. Like I need to raise $500,000, right? I need to raise $1 million, whatever. And frankly, the easiest way of doing that is to pretend that you know more than you do.
As you said, you can research your way out of an idea. I don't even know what it is. A small percentage of great storytellers that may have something without the research, that may lead to something completely disruptive, it will take over the market, or nobody's looking in that direction. And I think that there's like a small sliver of people that fit into that category, where it's like this idea has some merit. This person has merit. His partner has merit. And somewhere in that mix, something is good is going to happen here. And if not, I believe I'll back the founders, I'll back the partners.
Your choices, none of them are great. Like one is you just pretend, right? And you do, and you write, because as much as it's hard to raise on idea stage, especially as a first-time founder, that's what like a lot of accelerators and like incubators are there for. And it's so every now and then it does happen, or like some angels depending, but then you have to be hyper confident. You have to tell like a wonderful story. You got to like spend a lot of time, which we did at Gym Track, and it didn't necessarily lead us to the promised land, right? I think the other one, and this doesn't apply to like successful founders. I think successful founders, like they have credibility, so it's a lot easier to raise. Like you could maybe even be honest and just still raise money, whatever. But for first time founders, I think the other thing is like Gary Vee talked about this, and I don't know if I should be taking advice from Gary Vee or not, but that's a separate story. He's like, dude, just don't quit your job. You know what I mean? Like you think you need to go all in on this, like you don't. Like you really don't. Like just do it on the side. Like take off like all the Netflix hours, all the partying hours. Like take those away. Don't take your 9 to 5 away, and find a way to just do this stuff on the side until you actually feel like there's something real.
Tim Ferriss, same thing. Like he doesn't preach the 4-hour work week. He preaches basically 4 hours of research a week is what he's talking about. And even Dan Martell talks about that. He's like, stop watching the goddamn hockey game. Don't spend your Sundays watching football. Test an idea. Like he thinks that watching sports is the scourge of entrepreneurship, is that it basically zaps your life. So take those 19 hours a week that you watch football and throw them into an idea, right? And you don't have to quit your job to do that.
So we got number one. Okay, fine. Figured out. I mean, the second one is this kind of idea. Right? So like basically done.
Stamped.
Done, dude.
Done.
I mean, then you got to go out and do it. Actually, it's funny. The other day, somebody hit me up and said, look, I'm trying to do this research thing. I'm like struggling because okay, I bought into it. Like I'm going to do research. You know what? I'm going to do it. Like, how do I even do it? Right? Like, what
do I start a library?
Right? Like I'm trying to message these people and nobody answers. There is no one size fits all. I can tell you like one small tip, like if you're a younger first time founder, like, playing the student card and like this idea of like, look, I'm a student working on something and, I just need your expertise. Like that'll typically open a lot more doors than it should. The other thing though, is there's signal in everything. My point being like, if you're trying to message who you believe is your ICP and you're talking to a lot of them and you get like no answers, just know that when you go to sell to them, it's going to be the same thing, if not worse. And so like that alone is a signal of like how easy or hard it's going to be to penetrate into that audience.
You have to offer value. So can I tell a story here? Just it's a really quick one, because I was running a local company here in Ottawa, and we did IT administration from BlackBerry. So really early mobile stuff, like early 2000s, very, very early. BlackBerry was the dominant device, and it was a two-way pager at that point. No big screens, anything like that. And like you have 1,000 questions in this emerging industry, and there are way smarter people than me. So what did I do? I thought like there's got to be a better way for me to get through this hurdle of starting this business and growing this business. So I would go out to all these CEOs and I would hit them up as a fellow CEO, and I got zero responses. Like the same thing, like they have no time, no interest whatsoever. And then I thought, well, there's these things called podcasts that are just emerging at that time, 2006, 2007. And I thought, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start a podcast and interview them and ask them to be interviewed, like, because everybody wants their ego fed. And this is what I did. So I just started interviewing. I said, listen, I run a podcast. I'm going to interview. Everybody said yes. So I did thousands of these interviews, and that was my qualitative research right then and there. They were long form, early days long form. And the outcome was that I had thousands of interviews and tens of thousands of hours of knowledge accumulated from the experts in the field. Like, we're talking about people that I would never have been able to reach before. And I don't think you can do this anymore because everybody does a podcast, but that's a perfect example of finding a way around the gate to get the information that you need. And then I would publish these just out of curiosity to anybody who would listen. I wouldn't edit them. I wouldn't do anything. And then those were downloaded 2-3 million times a month as a result, because the information was relevant at the time. So there are ways to do this, but you just have to be a little bit inventive to find out.
The next one, only the insanely focused survive. I mean, that one is a little, hard to argue against, I think, because it's a little bit like kind of obvious. I mean, everybody talks, but I will say this: everybody talks about focus. Everybody preaches focus. And I'll tell you, like, very few founders are truly insanely focused, because the way I like to think about it is another thing I realized running Gym Track was like, you like, no matter what, this is different than being a VC, frankly. Like, I always laugh at VCs that are like, oh man, I'm so busy. I'm like, dude, what are you so busy with? Like, all you gotta do is invest in, like, a startup a month at most. Like, you're probably doing like 3 a year. Like, just, that's it. Like, the rest is just, but as a founder, you actually have that many things to do. And so if you put them in a list, like, you got 50 things, you got 100 things. And what inevitably happens is you get into this, like, checklist mode where you're like, okay, I got 50 things to do. Like, let's cross them off. And guess what rises quickly when you're in that mode? What rises top of the list is the things that can get done. Like, making a logo, that can get done. Like, filing a trademark, that can get done. Designing a website, that can get done. You know what can't get done? Find product market fit. You know what's hard to do? Like, sell your product, right? Like, and those are the things that
find your first
kind of fall off. And so what I started thinking about is, okay, you know what? Like, it's easy enough for me to say, here are the most important things and prioritize them. But I want something that's like kind of more intense than that. For me, it's just ones and zeros. Like, a thing is either must do, critical, it's a 1, or it's not, and it's a 0. And there are a few things on your list today where you're like, if I don't get these done this quarter, this year, whatever, I will not survive. And there are other things where you're like, even if I didn't get them done, I'll still be fine. I'll still survive. Like, here's an example of this. To me, it's just so funny. The founder of Forma AI is a Series B stage startup in Toronto. The founder's Nabil. And he told me, he's like, when we started, like, you incorporate, and usually like a numbered corporation. And then most founders will spend like a good amount of time trying to come up with a name. He's like, I was so focused on just like pleasing customers. Like, I had one customer that I was trying to kind of, I had a relationship with them before. And so we were really just building the product and trying to deploy it, that we just didn't name the company. And people would ask me, like, this doesn't have a name. It got to the point we hired a few employees on no company name. And then my CTO was like, dude, like, I need a company name, because it's getting to the point where I can't hire because people are like, man, I'm not working for like you guys don't even have a name. What's wrong with you? Right. So he's like, fine. So we named it. Right. But that's the level of insane focus. It's almost like he didn't do that thing until it became an actual blocker. Right. Versus, okay, it presents itself so you get it done at the expense of something else, because there's always trade-offs and there's always so many things to do. And that, I tell that story because, and that's why I use the word insane. It's like, that's actually insane to not, take the time to name your own company, but it's that level of focus that I think just gets things done.
I don't think there's a better example of that. Like, the first thing I've done with every one of my companies is name them, logo, 100%. Business card, slogan, and then I'm like, okay, what do we do? Right. That's it. Like, okay.
I named every company, man. I remember we talked with Lee about the one that was like, it was supposed to be a skip the dishes, like startdelivering.ca, man. We even had a website. We had it all. And then Gym Track, man. Oh, we went back so many times on Gym Track, but it's like, everybody knows what that does. Gym Track, we track gyms. That's it. Simple. It was so descriptive. We couldn't get a trademark. Honestly, the only thing that I think, like, if we're playing, devil's advocate on all these, because reality is so messy, right? And that's what we're trying to do here, is like, there are examples where it was like, I forget who it was that told me, it was like, you have to be focused, and yet you also have to be like open to opportunity. Because it's true that, like, well, I find that, right? It's like, wait, how do you square that? Right? Like,
Stop.
I think you're just saying words. Like,
exactly.
Just saying words. They don't. But wait, bear with me, right? Like, Because here's the thing, like on the one hand, if you're not like you're such a small team, you have so many things to do. If you're not focused, you're just not going to get the important things done. But the other side is like it's true that the best founders are opportunistic because you really don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict all this stuff. You can't strategize your way to success. And so you do have to have enough of an ear on the ground to see when things are worth paying attention to, especially when you're pre-product market fit. Like you have a thesis that this is the thing you need to do because this is the thing that's going to get me to product market fit. And it turns out there's actually a bigger opportunity over here and you didn't listen to it. And that's a tough balance. Like, there's a few examples. I think maybe Bolt, like that's one of the better ones. Mark at Bolt, right? They're doing like $100 million today. And what they do today is like not at all what they used to do, right? Today they actually are effectively like a warehouse for some really big name companies, big brand name companies like IKEA or enterprise customers. But they started off by storing students' things over the summer, right? And like, how do you go from there to there? And it's because Mark was like constantly willing to listen to indications that that there could be a bigger opportunity. The owner actually, here's a really interesting one. Rodolphe was the founder of Potluck. They're doing over 8 figures in AR today. They pivoted like 5 different times, but at one point they were selling research. What they're doing is localized research, and they were selling it to malls. And so the idea was like, you're a mall and you want to know, like, you want to effectively survey the people that visit the mall. And so they have this like infrastructure that uses Facebook and Instagram and these different platforms to understand like who might have visited the mall and just survey them. And this is before COVID. They're doing this. They're actually gaining real traction. They're getting pretty close to 8 figures in ARR. On the side, they start getting hit up by like actual research agencies like Gartner, these sort of players that just want generic research. And for whatever reason, and this is the difference, like Focus would tell you, just do malls, like forget this other stuff, right? Opportunity tells you like, you're doing malls, it's going well, but here's something that you should at least maybe listen to, right? And so he did listen to it and he serviced them in a small way. COVID happens, malls shut down, his business literally goes to zero. He luckily has this other thing on the side with the Gardeners of the world. And it turns out everybody needs surveys now because nobody knows what the hell's going on. The best founders, I will say, are insanely focused on what they need to get done. And at the same time, they somehow are opportunistic enough to not have full blinders on to see where opportunities might lead them, because the future is just, it's not predictable.
The big focus for me is that you can be focused on the moon and you can be off by, a half a degree in your trajectory and miss the moon and never come back to Earth, right? Like it's just small things that deviate and they move you a little bit off, and then you're never going to be recovered. That original idea is gone. Now you're heading to Mars, you're dead. Like, and that's the challenge with focus, is that if you don't take it seriously and if you don't believe in the idea, that's the other thing here, is that if your idea, you don't have the deep belief in the idea or of the business, your focus will wane. If you're not interested in the idea or you have an expertise in the idea, your focus will wane. And that leads to destruction in my mind.
You have to be in the market to win the market, right? And I posted online about this idea that you have to do research, you have to start with niche markets. And somebody was like, what about OpenAI? Like OpenAI from the get-go was like, no, right? Like I'm going to raise like $1 billion and I'm just going to do it. And that is legit. Like you have exceptions. The idea is the vast majority of $1 billion companies start off with niche markets, which is why for me as a VC, like TAM is just not all that important, honestly. Like I do look at back in the envelope really quickly, could this in theory become big? And that's like as far as I go at seed, right? Like later on, it takes on more importance because you just never know how markets are truly going to evolve. However, you do have examples of companies that just went big from day one, right? You got your Teslas, you got your Amazons, you got your OpenAI. Like these are top-down founders who decided like electric, big, like I'm doing electric cars, or like e-commerce, big, like I'm doing e-commerce, store for everything, right? That was like from day one. But I guess like my thing is, we said something else like for every 1,000 startups, you get one unicorn. For every 1,000 unicorns, you get one Amazon, right? So like I still stand by, I think you have to start, generally speaking, with niche markets, and you have to let the market pull you over time versus trying to kind of strategize your way to success, PowerPoint your way to success.
The niche is the most important thing that you can do. Figuring out in the market who your customers are and will they pay for what you're offering, what your services or what your software is or whatever it might be. That is the most important question that you need to have answered. Everything else is all crap. Before and after that, like you have to have that answer.
Don't kid yourself into thinking that the way to expand is to expand TAM. It's not for a long time. At some point, hey, you're doing 100 million ARR and you want to do 200, fine. Like that's not where I play. So I don't know, but you're going from 1 to 2 million ARR. I can guarantee you the right way to do it is not by, opening up a new market, opening up a new city, opening up a new vertical. It's by doubling down and tripling down, unless you actually don't have product market fit, in which case you're kind of more in this exploratory phase. That's the first point. The other one that I'll mention, Rob, is I got an email actually just today. This founder's like, I'm doing this thing that you said, like I did all the research. I'm going after a niche market. And we actually have success in this niche market. But now when I go pitch VCs, they're like, you're too small. Your market's too small. Your opportunity's too small. They won't fund me. And I was thinking about this all day. I was thinking about it. And I'm like, here's my answer. My answer is none of these are ways to get VC money. Like you want to go get VC money. There was something I heard, I don't remember when, but it was really, really interesting, which was so many things in life can be gamed. Like if you want to do well in school, you can game that system.
Yeah.
If you want to fundraise, you can game that system. I game that system, right? I game school and I game fundraising because you really can build a story and a deck and a presentation and all these other things to make you better at fundraising and to actually get dollars in the door. You can't game product market fit. You either actually get it or you don't. And that's what makes it so hard. And so all these things, if you focus on a niche market, it may turn out that your market's too small. It may turn out you're not fundable or that VCs won't see the opportunity, but at least you get product market fit. The flip side is you focus on fundraising, you game the system, you get VC dollars. But if you don't get the product market fit, it's all for naught, right? So that's kind of my take on that answer.
Well, it's summarized. Like I was thinking about it, product market fit is hard to find. It's very hard to find. You really have to. There's a lot of maneuvering to determine true product market fit, but it's really easy to give up on finding. Like you can get really lazy with product market fit, where you say like, "Oh, I got it good enough." And I've been in businesses where I come into the business and that business is in 7 or 8 markets and flailing, like different cities, and haven't found product market fit, and it's all over the place. And the only logical thing to do is pull back to one city to figure it out before you expand with the proper playbook. But it's really easy to trick yourself into thinking that you've got it.
So let me jump to the next one. Find value, not growth. The idea of being here, I think in the early days, because here's the thing, like every founder wants to grow. Like that's the whole point, right? You want to get big, you want to get to 100 million ARR and beyond. But interestingly, what I found is like in the early days, obsessing over growth, and I mean specifically before product market fit, thinking about growth and obsessing over it and making it like a KPI is meaningless, right? Like financial forecasts before PMF are meaningless. And there's a few errors that come out of that. I'll give you 2 very concrete examples that I've dealt with really recently. The first one is take a company that's growing, that's got like 30K or so in MRR, right? Kind of still getting traction, obviously, but still not true product market fit. What a company like this that's focused on growth is going to do is they're going to look at how much they've been growing over the last few months. And what they realize is they're growing 10% month over month. And so they think 10% month over month, if you extrapolate that, it means you're tripling, right? Which means you start focusing on how you're going to go from 300K to $1 million in ARR, 30K MRR, let's say to 100K in MRR in a year. The reality is a lot of these companies are not growing at a rate. They're actually growing linearly. So what this company is actually doing is growing $3,000 per month. But for them, 3,000 on 30K, it looks like 10% MRR. Because you're not focused on actually delivering value and on true product market fit, you miss this and you start to extrapolate out. And I've seen this play out to the point that companies like this will go on to raise meaningful dollars because they could tell this story. And now they're sitting on this huge pref stack because they've raised all this money. They never delivered meaningful value. They never actually delivered true product market fit. They were never growing compound, which by the way, that I would say is a great sign of product market fit. If you're actually compounding at whatever rate, but probably, you're doubling, that's a sign that you actually have product market fit because the market's actually pulling you. When you're growing linearly, that's a sign that maybe your market's small, but more likely that you're pushing exactly, and that you don't have that sort of market pull. And trying to understand that is really important, but it gets solved if you're not even focused on growth, if you're focused on value in those early days. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, actually, I just had this because, we're end of the year, people are forecasting next year. And I had this one company who's at like $1 million in ARR. And they were trying to forecast next year. And they're like, the forecast to hit like 3 million in ARR. And then, you forecast all your leads and you forecast all these things. And when we looked, and I said, like, let's look at 2023. Let's actually analyze the business. We realized there's actually no engines. Like, there is nothing proven. There's nothing you can dial up. I said to him, did you, for example, try to dial up inbound leads this year and see if that worked? No, I haven't. I've gone what I've gone. Okay. So you actually, in order to hit 3x, you need to 3x your inbound leads, but you have not tested anything that actually does that. You therefore have no way of knowing whether you can do that, which means it's all effectively garbage, right? The other one was on outbound sales. This often happens. It's like, you've gone there with the one or two people that you have. Have you hired someone and trained them? Well, I did it once this year. Okay, so your sales leader is still selling, and they had to hire and onboard one person. But now you got to do it 4 times over. Do you have an idea of what it actually takes to onboard? Do you have an idea of what success rate you're going to have? You don't. So my point is, when you focus on growth before you have true value, you're making things up because you haven't figured out any of the engines that actually drive growth, that make growth a meaningful KPI after product market fit.
Way to crush that guy's spirit, 100%. He's down in the dumps now. He's like, well, he's out.
But I said, look, forecasting works. Do this. Figure out if you just keep growing at your rate of, not rate of growth. You added 1 million ARR last year. Let's assume you add 1 more million this year, and just figure out what your runway is, because that's going to help you sleep at night to understand what your runway is. It's really important as a founder. What I'm not so interested in is you trying to predict 12 months out what revenue is going to be. Who cares? Let's just do it quarter by quarter. What do we need to test this quarter to see if it improves inbound leads, to see if it improves conversion, to see if it improves outbound, whatever. And if it works, great, we double down. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. The next quarter, we try something new, versus trying to say, this is where I'm going to be a year from now. Like, public companies have trouble with this. Like, for sure, if you're at $1 million ARR, you have no
like, it's a refreshing approach simply, but it's a very founder approach, right? Because the trap that you get into by trying to project 1 year. Now, what if somebody asked you for 3-year revenue growth? Like, it's just, you can't. Nobody predicted this mobile world that we're in, right? So, like, there was the web, and then everybody had their predictions on the web, and nobody really saw this handheld device that BlackBerry came out with, or that the iPhone came out with. Like, nobody saw that coming down the road, like, or the implications of that. And so you're smack dab in there. It's 2007. Steve Jobs is up there releasing the iPhone, and you've got this plan, a 3-year plan. You can't be held accountable from that day forward because the world changed on that day. Same thing is happening today with AI, and like, you just can't do that. We did this revenue without any of that. Now imagine if we had it. Like, that's the thinking, right? Is that, okay, I have 4 salespeople and it's done.
It's funny, Rob. Here's an example, actually, concrete example. Bootstrap business grew to 2 million ARR, and it was like, and we're bootstrapped and we're profitable and we're 9 people, and I've been doing all the sales. So imagine what happens when I hire a bunch of salespeople, which honestly, legit, a year later, so they started 2 million ARR. A year later, you know how much ARR they had? 2 million, man. Because what happens when this founder doesn't sell is you don't sell. That's what happened. And I say that because there's a lesson there, which is like, you can't assume things without testing them.
It's a hard thing, and especially because as a founder, you are probably the best salesperson, hands down. You will not hire somebody in this stage of a company that can sell better. If you have the passion and you understand the business that you're in, you believe it, you breathe it, you bleed it. And the person you bring in will give up sooner, will say the wrong words faster, will not succeed like a founder succeeds. And even in the current business that I'm in, is that we know that our CEO is the greatest salesperson that we have, like among other skills. But what you end up forgetting is that as you're trying to scale, they distance themselves from that skill, and you are making it up. Like, so now it's like 4 to 1. I need 4 salespeople to do what one guy did before. And then when he comes back into the sales role, like stuff happens overnight. Like it's unbelievable. And you can't get that.
It's almost like, they tell you you shouldn't be working in the business, you should be working on the business. And I'm like, no, you should be working in the business as long as humanly possible. You should do whatever's the hardest thing to do that you're best at. That's probably the thing you should be doing for as long as you can until it's truly breaking, versus trying to kind of get ahead of it and infrastructure your way and org chart your way into something that looks like a beautiful company on paper, right?
Like, I'm going to do it for the first 100 times. I'm going to do it where it's unscalable. There's a lot of mechanical Turk. It's human. Like, I'm sending the emails. So like, if you get an email from me, it is coming from me, written from me at that moment. And I'm doing the unscalable thing. And I'm going to test a whole bunch of different things as I go along. And then I'm going to realize what does work, because I'm going to see a natural pull. I'm going to see a lift because of the effort, and it's just going to tumble. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's put that into a strategy, a playbook. We'll productize that. And then I can hand it off when I feel very comfortable with the fact that I'm seeing that lift, not because I'm pushing, but because I'm getting pulled. And I need to know that. It's just, when you learn how to water ski for the first time, like, it's not hard to stand up on water skis. It's just not. But you can't pull. You have to be pulled. You have to go with the boat. And most people pull right away and then they sink. So what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to get up, stand up, and then the whole thing has to pull you. And that's when you know that it's okay to maybe pull back a little bit and bring somebody else in to do that.
So the last one, just to wrap this up, which is the pivot one, right? Pivot harder, faster. I'm, honestly, like, I'm a very impatient dude. And, oftentimes the question with this one is like, okay, like, when do I know if I should pivot, right? Like, I've been doing this thing. It's kind of working. It's kind of not. My kind of hot take is just pivot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just do it. Just rip the Band-Aid off. And I'm sure that's like, it's kind of wrong. Like, I'm sure there are examples of when you shouldn't have. I'm not saying give up, do something completely different, but like, change something material. Like, if you've been doing it for an amount of months, and like, it's almost like by the time you're asking yourself the question, because you start off with so much excitement, right? And you kind of like, you're in it and you're like, things are going to work and whatever. And you get like some signals that things are working. And so you're probably going to, if anything, it's the same, similar to an employee, right? Like, by the time that you're like, I don't know if this person's really working out, maybe we should part ways. You probably should 80% plus of the time in startup world. Like, bigger companies different, but in startup world, just because there's a reason why you've gone there. And I'm not saying the employee's not good. I'm saying there's a fit issue, right? Similar with this product market fit piece. Like, once you're seriously thinking about, I don't know, maybe I should pivot, 80% of the time, you probably should. And 80% of the time, you probably don't.
I'm mixed on this, because like, I also believe that it's really easy to give up, right? Like, the real thing, the challenge that I have with today is that platforms make it really easy to test something or to start a business. And then if it's too much work or if it's too much effort to answer these questions, people just give up and they go to the next one and they go to the next one and they go to the next one. And you can see that quite a bit in some entrepreneurs where they've started a whole bunch of businesses. I talk to them all the time. It's just the nature of our business as well, as like, I had to put my business on hold because, like, it's easy to give up. It's very easy to give up. So there's got to be a little bit of tenacity around the business idea. And that's where, if you've done your research in the idea and you've been in market and you've talked to those people that are doing it, then the pivot shouldn't be a dramatic pivot or a give up. But you definitely have to be open to it. I worry that some great ideas that take a lot of hard work get into the idea or get into the mind of a weak entrepreneur. And they don't have the tenacity or the strength or the desire or whatever it is, the calluses to see that idea through. And they're like, nah, I'm not interested. And then they go off and it doesn't get invented.
We did Nike, right? Not too long ago. Like, how long did Phil Knight fight the good fight of
and he should have given up every month, every year, right? Like, but there is a balance, though, because I've seen some really stupid ideas, and I mean, it's like really bad ideas.
Again, like, going back to this, like, Phil Knight actually was doubling, really small numbers, but he actually was doubling, his sales every year. So anyways, that's those are the 5 steps kind of elaborated, let's say.
As you said earlier on, though, Pablo, none of this will, like, following these five won't get you funded. Like, you still have to have that ability to turn it into a business. Like, this is something that just following these 5 steps doesn't mean that ultimately somebody's going to write you a check. You still have to build a business.
That's it. That's the key, man. Well, there's separate skills. Like finding true product market fit is a separate skill from fundraising, right? There's people that can do one, people that can do the other, people that can do both. But none of this is for fundraising. But even I do think doing all these things does 2 things. One, I think it increases your odds of finding product market fit, and I think it shortens the amount of time that you're going to take on something that's probably not going to get the product market fit.
And it might just lead to a lifestyle business, which could be fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. 99.9% of all businesses are lifestyle businesses.
Well, I'll tell you this, man. Everybody's jealous of the founder who raised 10 million until they see the founder that has a 10 million a year business and they own 100% of it. And then they're like, whoa, that would have been nice.
Yeah, and it's just spitting cash. Like, it is I just found out a good friend of mine from high school owns a banana company. And it is like a 10-year journey on selling organic and fair trade bananas. And it's a giant business, 100% owned by her. Like, I would rather have a giant business, like a small business, 100% owned that's spitting cash, than a giant business funding hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. And I make a salary and I don't sleep. Oh wait, that's what I'm doing, except for the salary. Oh wait, who's the sucker now?
If you listen to this episode and the show and you like it, I have a huge favor to ask for you. Well, it's actually a really small favor, but it has huge impact. But whichever app you're listening to this episode on, take it out, go to Product Market Fit Show, and leave a review, please. It's going to help. It's not just going to help me, to be clear. It's going to help other founders discover this show, because the algorithms, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, whether it's any other podcast player, one of the big things they look at is frequency of reviews. It's quantity of reviews. And the reality is, if all of you listening right now left reviews, we would have thousands of reviews. So please take literally a minute, even if you're just writing like, great podcast, or I love this podcast, whatever it is, just write a few words. Obviously, the longer the better, the more detailed the better, but write anything, leave 5 stars, and you will be helping me, but most importantly, many other founders just like you discover the show. Thank you.